Ah, there you are. There you are. So, welcome back to our Gold Experience B2 video class. So, have you got a good sense of direction? Have you ever got lost? Okay, what did you do? Well, today we're looking at maps. Do you ever use maps these days, or is it just sticking with your mobile phone and Google? I think I know the answer. Let's look at different kinds of maps. So turn to page 82, exercise 2. Look at these different types of maps and discuss their uses. Okay, so we'll start off with the first one, and we've got an atlas. Okay, an atlas. That's right, it's kind of a book full of maps. I suppose the only use for it now tends to be for entertainment or for, I think they're lovely things to have in your house, but I don't suppose anybody really uses them, mainly possibly for reference in geography classes. What about this? A globe. Well, that's a very small one, but we do get very decorative ones, and I think that's the main use now, isn't it? For decoration, a globe. Google Earth? Navigational charts. Who uses those? Well, that's what we refer to maps used by sailors and people who are travelling or sailing in their boats. Road maps or metro maps or underground maps were used when we're using transport, maybe to commute and to travel around the city. Topographical map, ones that show features, show the contours of mountains and rivers, etc. Well, professionally, probably surveyors, as they plan where to build a road, for example. Or walkers, people who walk in the countryside but don't want to take their mobile phone and want to use the old tactics of a compass, north, south, east, west, and a map. And finally, a digital map. Okay, we'll find the last two, digital maps of all sorts of different ways, and Google Maps, the most famous GPS system now. Well, let's listen to a girl. She's talking about a map exhibition. Which type of maps from this exercise 2, does she mention? Okay, so listen, what types of maps does she mention? Also, can you notice when the listening starts? Because I want you to listen to that thing 2 times. Okay, but first, just listen. In general, what sort of maps does she see in the exhibition? Okay, just have to wait for a second while I get the listening ready. Internet connection very slow today. I don't know how it is for you. Let's listen.
You know, today we see maps as being very functional things that can quickly tell us how to get from A to B. So when I went to an exhibition about maps through the centuries, I really didn't know what to expect. First, I listened to a talk by an educator, someone who tries to get young people to think about how they see the world. What he did was to turn maps upside down, so that the countries we are used to seeing at the top of the world were at the bottom. That was a really clever idea. He also produced maps that had no borders between countries, a useful way of showing the connections between us all, I thought. But going back to the history of maps, in the early days, about 400 or 500 years ago, people used to draw pictures of things they thought were in a particular spot. So some of the oldest maps in the exhibition, the so-called mythical maps, had pots of gold drawn on them to represent places where riches might be found, or sea monsters for things like hidden rocks in the sea that might cause accidents. What I found fascinating about these old maps was that they tell a story about what the people who lived back then believed about their world. I thought it was funny that some of them showed the world which they thought was flat, so if you sailed over the horizon, you'd fall off the edge. I could have spent a long time in front of a globe that was hanging from the ceiling and revolving slowly. Varying aspects of life on Earth were projected digitally onto it and changed every few minutes. I wasn't expecting to see something like that in the map exhibition, and everyone seemed fascinated by it. What was really impressive was when all the oceans were lit up, with the land in darkness, which showed very clearly just how much of our planet is taken up by them. It was a great way to learn through visual images rather than have lots of facts thrown at you. Also on display were examples of maps in literature. A copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's original map of Middle-earth was there, for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien spent hours developing his maps in detail, and they really brought his fantasy alive with his pictures of mountain ranges and battlefields. I want to learn how to create my own digital maps, so some of my time there needed to be spent at the Techie Corner. I had the guy explain to me how to use online mapping tools, and I can't wait to try them out. My plan is to create an interactive map of my hometown, so I'll use historical and geographical data as well as other stuff to do with my old school and places we went to as kids. I'm sure you have all used Google Earth to check out where you live. There was a whole separate section for that, and Google Sky, and it's a fantastic tool to use. To gather the data, a combination of pictures from satellites and aircraft is used, which are obviously resources that map makers in the past didn't have. They were dependent on explorers for most of their data. So, an amazing day, and one in which I expanded my mind. Maps are particularly useful because they can communicate a huge amount of information which otherwise would need explaining through a lot of words. I'd never really thought about that aspect of maps before.
Okay, so there you go, her experiences at the map exhibition. She saw a globe, and she saw lots of maps, but the ones that were mentioned from exercise 2 were a globe, that's right, digital map, she was thinking about doing one herself, I think, and Google Earth. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to complete a description of what Emma talked about, okay, the art of maps. Now remember, as it says in the exam tip in part 4, remember that the sentences follow the order of the recording. So it's always good to read, so you know what you're going to listen for. The answer will be a word or phrase from the recording. You mustn't change any part of it, but we can kind of anticipate, as we've practiced many times, what the information could be. Remember, it should make grammatical or contextual sense. If we look at part 1, question 1, is the answer border or borders? Well, let's read it. She was interested by an educator who showed some maps where the countries had no... Well, I think countries usually have borders. Okay, she's already said maps and countries, so the answer is going to be borders. Yeah? So there you are. Lucky we've got number 1 already. So rewind the video to the start of the listening. Okay, so stop your YouTube video and go back to, I think it's around 3 minutes 25. Okay, more or less. Listen to the recording again and complete the text, The Art of Maps. Okay, so pause the bit, rewind, and then when you're ready, after you've read through the text, press play, and we're going to come back to here, 8 minutes 32. Okay, well, I hope you understood all that, and you got to listen again. Okay, so let's check the answers, shall we? Number 1 we know is borders. What about number 2? The older maps were different from the modern ones because of the pictures. Yeah. Number 3, things that might be dangerous were represented by sea monsters. Okay. Number 4, some maps showed that the Earth was flat. Okay, that amused Emma. Emma was surprised that a globe was being used as part of the exhibition. She thought seeing visual images such as the extent of the world's oceans, yeah, that's right, oceans, was a great method of educating people. A display of maps from literature, including a Tolkien map that showed the fantasy he'd spent on so long creating. Number 8, I think it is, yeah. Start work on a digital map of her town. Okay. Number 9, map makers of the past relied on explorers, okay, to gather the data. Emma hadn't previously considered how much, so it must be uncountable how much, yeah? How much information a map can contain. Okay, so I hope you did okay on that. Let me know if you had any problems with listening the second time, okay? So, if we look at part 5, there are 6 words taken from Emma's description. Match the words from the listening with their meaning. Okay, pause the video and then we'll check. Okay, back again. So let's look at them, listen to the pronunciation as well. So functional. Okay, that is C. Yes, practical. Number 2, revolve. D. Move around a sentence point. Now this is a verb, so notice the pronunciation is project. Okay, when it's a noun we pronounce it project, but when we talk about the verb, the image was projected. Okay, project. Okay, and it's caused an image to appear. Number 4, combination. Combination, yeah, is a mixture of 2 things. That's A. Separate. Notice the spelling. Separate. A-R-A-T-E. Okay, 2 E's and 2 A's. Separate. And that is what? F. Existing in different physical space. Like you and me, we're separate here, but I like to think we're together. And finally, expand. Okay, increase in size and importance. Okay, I shouldn't have any problem with that one, I don't think. All right, so let's stop there. There's a couple of questions for you to consider and discuss. Maybe I'll send you a link for you to tell me what you think. Okay. So here are some questions. How important do you think it is to be able to read a map? What do you think? Is there any use for paper maps anymore? I mean, we all have our telephones. Paper maps any use now? Number 3, how has the use of satellite mapping and photography changed the way we look at the world? Okay, this unit is about viewpoints and different ways of seeing things. Has that changed? 4, perhaps you could look at some of the possibilities that Google Earth or Google Sky have, or any future advances you could think of in terms of these navigational digital aids, and report back on your findings. Okay, and a little bit of homework is the last part in the blue strip. Why don't you think of what is your favourite planet? If you haven't got a favourite planet, just choose one at random and simply type the name into Google Sky tonight and have a look up at it. Okay, see where it is. Think about where we are as well. Okay, so hope you're all well. Usual message, stay at home, stay safe, wash those hands, and we'll see each other soon, I hope. All right, goodbye.